rockies.org. So with that, I will turn it over to Kristin. Kristin is our vice president of our board of directors, a great partner, also the chair of our Vitality event. And again, she's here to talk about kind of where aging and what's next and the resources out there. So with that, Kristin, I will give it to you. And you are muted, Kristin, if you could unmute yourself.
Off to an amazing start, you
there
guys.
You go.
Okay, nice to be here. Thank you, Seth, so much for allowing me to present today to you all, and thank you for the warm welcome. I am Kristin. Like Seth said, I'm the vice president of the board of the Parkinson Association of the Rockies and the chair of the Vitality Walk, so we hope to see you there. I am also the co-owner of Home Instead. We have 3 franchises. Home Instead is the largest home care provider in the world. And here in Colorado, we cover the Denver metro and northern Colorado areas. Here is my lovely co-owner. He is my dad. This is Robert. It's been a family-owned business for the last 28 years here in the Denver metro area. And again, Home Instead is the #1 home care agency globally, started in Omaha, Nebraska, where we're both from. Home Instead is committed to ensuring that older adults have a plan for a better what's next. As we age, sometimes it can feel daunting, traumatic, a lot of uncertainty, and we're here to help families create a better what's next so we can all look forward to the retirement years in the last 2 or 3 decades of our lives. Seth mentioned earlier that Home Instead is offering for, I think, the 4th year in a row, free care for individuals living with Parkinson's so their care partners can attend this important educational event, May 10th. Please give us a call, or you can just email referral@homeinstead.com, and we will get you set up for care for that day for your loved one. Today, we're going to cover a lot, so buckle up. I think I have 70 slides. So if I talk quickly, I apologize, but I do want to leave time for questions at the end. And you can add the questions to the chat, and Erin can answer the ones that she can. I won't be able to see the chat as I'm presenting, but again, I'll answer as many as I can at the end. And all of these materials can be available to you by emailing me or Seth. And so you don't need to memorize anything today. But let's talk about where and how older adults can age, and when is more help needed? How do I know? What are my options? Who pays for that help? Family dynamics, the caregiver burden right now, and the 5 hot button topics for each family as their loved one or they age themselves. And then completing an elderscopy. It's a play on the word colonoscopy, but it's 5 questions that every family should ask as their loved one's aging before it's too late. It's no surprise that 90% of older adults wish to remain at home as they age. 70% of those older adults do require some help at some point, and then 20% of those adults require it for long term, so 5 or more years. People want to stay at home for a variety of reasons. There's a significant meaning attached to a person's home. Older adults want choices about where and how they age in place. They see home as providing a feeling of security and familiarity. They know their neighbors. They're close to their favorite places, grocery store, bank, pharmacy. They know how to get there. They know where things are. They have their routine. It's especially helpful if there's any memory loss involved to not disrupt the living environment in which that person lives. Aging in place is also related to a sense of identity, independence, autonomy, and that can help someone live longer. But aging in place does require some support and some planning. So the majority of care falls to the family members when an older adult remains at home for their life. Supportive services at home that a lot of families consider are to fill in the gaps of care that their children provide, grandchildren provide, neighbors provide support with tasks that family members can't do or prefer not to do, such as bathing or complex medical tasks that they don't feel comfortable doing. And then while a family does take on a lot of the care, it can be easy to reach burnout, so support services can provide respite or a break. So this is kind of what a care team typically looks like as someone ages. They're going to have their family, and we're seeing increasingly common families live across the country. But it's delightful and wonderful when family lives nearby. And then we have home care and home health care. Those are two terms that are often interchanged, but they are very different services that are available to people. And then other support. We see a lot of private duty nursing, Meals on Wheels. You'll have your own private housekeeper that, they have a relationship for the last 30 years. So that is the start of a care team for an individual who is aging in place. Now, there's a lot of terms out there, and it's hard to know what they are until you experience it firsthand by having an older adult in your life age. And so, if this is your first time experiencing it, these are all going to be new. There's non medical care, visiting nurse, home health, there's assisted living, independent living, skilled nursing, memory care, nursing homes, homemaker and respite. There's sitter services. It's just a lot to know. And so it's important to educate yourself before you're needing any of these to understand what are all my options when my loved one is aging and what can I expect and how do I financially plan for any option that we choose. So the first step would be to assess what type of care is needed for your loved one. You'll hear a lot these two terms, IADLs and ADLs. An IADL stands for an instrumental activity of daily living. That can include driving to an appointment, preparing meals to ensure proper nutrition, doing housework around the home, shopping, managing finances, filling a pill box and ensuring that those pills are taken, especially important for those with Parkinson's, and using the telephone, remaining an active participant within our communities. So those are important, and they're oftentimes the first thing that people need some support with. Then there's these activities of daily living. That's eating. So perhaps they can't cook and they need some support with a trimmer for actually the task of eating, getting dressed in the morning, choosing appropriate dress depending on the weather. Bathing, that can be that they're comfortable bathing, but maybe they don't like bathing anymore. So it's encouragement to bathe and grooming, toileting, continence care, and transferring. And those activities of daily living sometimes can trigger the ability to have long term care insurance pay for care once you need some of those. Same with veterans benefits. Having a couple ADLs that you need support with would trigger some other payer sources to support with home care. Now, there's also medical tasks. So this is often happens after you end up in the hospital and then you go to rehab. And then after you go to rehab, you come home with home health because you have some higher level needs at that time. That can include occupational therapy. Occupational therapy, an easy way to remember it, it's kind of, if you think of the word occupation, you are training to do your occupation. And as you're aging, your occupation is remaining safe in your home. And so it's a lot of training on ensuring that you are equipped to be successful and staying safe in your own home. So learning how to use new grab bars or adaptive equipment or getting in and out of a bed on your own. You want to remain as independent as possible. Physical therapy comes in to promote strength and mobility. Speech therapy is something that is incredibly useful if there's ever any aphasia, swallowing issues, word recall, and then nursing. So nursing can come in, fill pill boxes, or manage a wound, or provide injections or an IV. Pain management is something that is often seen in the home and done by a higher level of service. And then diabetes management can be complicated and does require nursing oversight. So this is the biggest thing that individuals get kind of confused. What is home health and what is home care? So home health care is complementary to home care, and it is often paid for by health insurance. Home care is often paid for by long-term care, VA, or private pay. And home care is kind of a longer term solution. Home health care is often episodic, which means that you might get 6 visits in 1 month to promote strength and mobility, or whatever goal is set in place at that point. So the patient must be homebound. That doesn't mean that they can never leave their home, but it means it's, pretty difficult to leave your home. and it's provided by nurses, therapists, and aides. And these individuals that provide this service are Medicare certified for older adults. So Medicare does cover home health care. There does need to be a qualifying event. Oftentimes, a hospital or rehab stay, or maybe a fall in the home can trigger a home health referral by a physician to get this paid for. This is an underutilized service. More families should use home health care to promote and fix an issue in the home, like if you have a loved one who had a fall and it was because of a functional issue. That person needs more strength. And in order to keep them safe in the home, let's call the physician to get a home health care referral. Again, it's short-term, intermittent. They'll come, they'll do an assessment, they'll set a goal, and they'll work for a period of time on meeting that goal. Again, a physician does need to write an order for that, and it's covered by Medicare, Medicare Advantage, Medicaid, private insurance companies, and VA. This is not out of pocket. Home care, on the other hand, this provides here in Colorado a licensed home care agency offering home health care aides and caregiving professionals, sometimes CNAs. And it can look a variety of ways. You could have a company pop in for an hour to ensure medications were taken and a bath was had. Or you can have someone live in or do 24/7 care. They're the eyes and ears of the home. They're trained in aging. They provide respite care, and there's no referral that's needed. Oftentimes, someone figures out they need it after a referral to home health or to a rehab. But they can do a lot. So they can do a safety assessment around the home, ensure medications are properly taken. They can do the housekeeping. They can make meals and they can prep them in advance, ensure adequate hydration to prevent UTI that might cause a hospitalization. Socialization is something that is so important as we age. Loneliness is an epidemic and it can cause a variety of health concerns just from being lonely. It can increase your risk of a heart attack. Toileting and bathing, continence, they help with memory loss, and then hospice care and support. Long-term care insurance does cover home care. So does the Veterans Assist benefit. So if anyone is a veteran, their services are free. Private pay and family funded is the most common way that home care is funded. Medicare Advantage plans. And then if you qualify for Medicaid, there's a Medicaid waiver program here in Colorado that can cover home care. Now, not all home care options are equal. They're all quite different. So sometimes families will use that neighbor down the street that they've had a relationship with, and they'll pop in, they'll check on dad, and they'll make sure he's okay, and they'll communicate with the family. There's also something called a registry. You might have heard of the website care.com. So that is you sorting through options and hiring someone directly, and you are the employer. 1099 is very similar to a registry. There are agencies that, look like a licensed home care agency, but really they're a broker of 1099 employees. Again, you are responsible for insurance and liability, and could be payroll taxes if they misqualify that employee in your home. You could be liable for their taxes. W-2 caregiver is probably the easiest and safest way to go because they are fully insured, work comp bonded, general liability. They're overseen in the home, and all their payroll taxes, unemployment benefits, those are all covered. And then you can have a CNA under a Class A state license, which is a higher level license than a caregiving company, which would have a Class B state license. And those CNAs can do things like take vitals. And then LPNs and RNs. So when you're determining who's going to help my mom or my dad in my home, think about all your options. This is just kind of a nice chart about the differences between your options. So if you hire someone privately, they're not bonded, licensed, insured, and the government taxes are not handled by the agency. Peace of mind. So if someone is ill or sick, you go without care. So you need to determine how important is it for reliability and dependability Whereas a home care agency and Home Instead, for example, we're open 24/7, and Home Instead can start care the same day in the event of emergency. Then there's comprehensive care. So some home care companies have that Class A license. They can do nursing care, they can do live-in care, they don't have any minimums, and it's super flexible. And then experience and reputation, and then employee benefits. How well are these care professionals treated? Are they with the company for a long time, or are you going to meet a new face every day? Private duty nursing is another term that can be confusing for families. So, if someone needs a high level of support, like a trach or event, LPN or an RN might be in the home for extended periods of time to provide that care. Oftentimes, as private pay or private insurance, depending on the situation. Workman's comp insurance is a large payer source of private duty nursing, and Medicaid. Palliative care is something that a lot of families are learning about now, and it's more utilized now than ever before. The thing about palliative care that's different than hospice care, those two can be used interchangeably, but incorrectly, is that you don't need to have that terminal illness to qualify for palliative care. It is based on the symptoms that you have, like pain or breathlessness or fatigue. There's a lot of illnesses that might trigger someone to think about using palliative care, and Parkinson's is one of them. But cancer, heart failure, COPD, kidney failure, dementia, liver disease, strokes, those are complicated medical diagnoses that families benefit from some care coordination with physicians and nurses and social workers. And so this is a service that is paid for, oftentimes mostly by Medicare, Part B. And then there's a couple things that you can add on that are private pay, like if you need a nurse practitioner to come visit, and some Medicare Advantage plans pay. And then it can also provide some spiritual care and support, which is important because no matter what, if you're dealing with a difficult and chronic illness, it's important to consider your emotional and psychological needs as well. And again, that's paid for by Medicare, Medicaid, VA, private pay. Some you can add on some self-pay services. So that is palliative care. Hospice care is fully paid for. No part of hospice care is out of your pocket. And families qualify for hospice care when they have decided to forego their treatment of that chronic illness or terminal illness, and the physician order states that they probably have 6 months or less to live. You can continually re-qualify for hospice. You can be on hospice for a long time. So it's a service that should be utilized sooner rather than later because all of your meds are covered. All of your durable medical equipment is covered. You need a new bed, you need a new wheelchair, you need a walker, you need supplies for a bed bath. That's all paid for by insurance. It offers family training, therapy, spiritual support. There's volunteers who can come in and provide companionship. So this is an amazing service, and there's a lot of wonderful companies here in the Denver metro area that provide hospice support. Some misconceptions that I've heard in my tenure working in home care is that that your insurance is going to cover a lot more than it does. That perhaps your insurance covers assisted living when your parent might need it. And the fact is it doesn't. And we wrongly assume that the costs of care are going to be covered by Medicare or Social Security benefits. And families are outliving their ability to pay for care. And they're trying to be really creative on how to figure this out. And we've helped numerous families with those tough conversations. And so let's talk about who is paying for us as we age. So we have Medicare Part A. Medicare Part A covers hospital stays, skilled nursing, which is short term, sometimes after a hospital stay. Hospice is fully covered by Medicare Part A. And then sometimes you can get pieces of the home health covered by Medicare Part A, like a PT or an OT or a speech therapist in your home. Medicare Part B is your outpatient services and your professional services. So your doctors Your preventative care, your durable medical equipment can be covered by Medicare. So if you need something adapted in your home, please reach out because we know which companies work with Medicare Part B. So you do not need to pay for the adjustments to your home to remain in your home. And then there are some limited home health care services as well covered under Medicare Part B. Then there's Medicare Part C, which is commonly known as your Advantage plans. So it covers A and B, but it also can include vision, dental, hearing. And then sometimes it covers home care or adult day. So Home Instead does accept Medicare Advantage plans, for example. And then usually those are episodic after an event and they cover, 40 hours of care, for example. And then Medicare Part D is your prescription drug coverage, and Medicaid is based on your assets and income level, and it can cover long term nursing home care and then some home care and home and community based services. And some assisted livings can do like a Medicaid spend down. So we've been seeing more often there need to be 2 years of private pay, and then you can remain in the same place using your new Medicaid. And then there's private pay and out of pocket. So families band together and they can pay for home care or private duty nursing. They pay for assisted living and memory care, independent living, and adult daycare. And those prices can range pretty dramatically, how much each one of those can cost. Long-term care insurance covers home care if you move to an assisted living community or a memory care community and a nursing home. Only 2% of American families, I believe, have long-term care insurance. If you do have one, my recommendation is don't wait too long to use it. I've seen too many families not use their full benefit and be very disappointed because they've paid a long time into that insurance program. And then the VA, as of a few years ago, began covering home care. And there's also this aid and attendance program. The aid and attendance program is really helpful if the veteran passes before the community spouse does, because some of those benefits can be passed on to the community spouse. And then it can cover skilled and long-term care as well. So there's an epidemic of family members caring for their loved ones, and it's a beautiful, amazing thing that we can do for our parents. But the numbers are really startling because we're aging really quickly at a faster pace than ever. Our older adult population is growing, and the individuals who are caring for them are having fewer children. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future regarding the family caregiving, because it's a huge part of people's care plan. 53 million adults serve as an informal caregiver to someone else. That is an astounding number. And 16 million Americans care for someone with dementia. And then that's a $470 billion industry of unpaid caregiving. So those individuals, if they were paid for the services that they're providing, they would have earned $470 billion. So caregiving is something that touches us all. And I'm grateful that there's organizations out there advocating for these caregivers, like the Roslyn Center Institute for Caregivers. That's a big one. And they're doing a lot of federal work on how do we support the family caregivers. Like I mentioned, the family caregiver pool is becoming smaller. The potential family caregivers are nearly cut in half, and we're seeing the family caregiver and the nearest child being 280 miles away. So that's the average distance between the family member and that aging adult. And so that presents different challenges in the requirement of use of new and interesting technologies, which I could talk a whole hour about ways that we can help our families from far apart. The issue with family caregiving and, the sandwich generation, they may be raising their own kids, also caring for their parents, and then their mother-in-law and their full-time working individuals. And a triggering event that actually makes, moves is an emergency. And that's that's difficult. It makes everything a little harder. So 68% of families wait too long to begin talking with their parent about what do you want the end of your life to look like. 70% of aging conversations are prompted by an emergency. So that number I really would like to switch. I'd like it to be few and far between that the first time we have a conversation with ourselves about what we want or our loved ones, it needs to be, it needs to be part of our conversations in our relationships. It needs to be a dinner table conversation. We used to have this rule called the 40-70 rule. When you're 40 and your parent is 70, that's the time to start these conversations. People are living longer, and so I'm seeing those conversations happen at 50 and 80. But at times, that's too, you need to plan in advance. So I'm still back, even though 70-year-olds are vibrant and they're healthy and they're doing a lot of amazing things. It's still important, even if your parent is super healthy, 40-70, to have that conversation. So 5 of the hot button issues that can cause difficulty in that family relationship, if we don't talk about them soon enough, are their health, their finances, how independent do they want to be, how far away am I from them, and what kind of boundaries do I set as a daughter, and does my dad set as a father? So health. Oftentimes there's a parent who becomes ill or experiences declining health, and it can leave the family facing all sorts of potential difficult issues. So, who's going to provide the care? How is care going to be divided amongst us siblings? And then, what kind of care are we going to have? And there's often disagreements about what that's going to look like. And to further complicate the situation, many illnesses present changing needs, and the changes in condition can create an immediate need that needs immediate action. So, health can also be an issue if the individual who is aging is resistant to following doctor's orders, taking their meds, bathing and grooming, getting help in the home, or moving. It can be difficult if there's substance use involved, if there's cognitive decline, because at what point can they still make decisions for themselves? Do we have powers of attorneys in place to help make decisions on their behalf before there is severe cognitive decline? Is there advanced directives and end of life care all set up? So it's really complex. And so having a conversation with your loved one, or if you are the one that's aging, bringing up the conversation, these are my expectations and this is what I see for myself, is really important to avoid those disagreements. Finances. Who is going to pay for care? Because inevitably, this last part of everyone's life is the most expensive part of your life. There are expenses that the primary caregiver will take on. There's inheritances that can create some family dynamics. Who has the financial power of attorney? My mom won't let me do her finances, but she keeps spending money on apps on her Apple Watch and phone, and I fear she is going to be taken advantage of financially. But she has memory loss. So now what? Understand all the options for paying for care. So, write out, okay, if this happens, this is the payer source. And if this happens, this is the payer source. And this is how much we can budget for that. There's financial advisors who fully and solely focus just on this. And there's companies that have care managers or geriatric case managers who do this for a living. And this does not need to be all on you. I would ask for help because there's a lot going on with your finances. And it's important that we plan. This is one of my favorite slides. What happens if you don't have a plan? Prince died in 2016 without a will and left his $200 million estate to a stranger. And then Barry White was separated, but not divorced, from the second wife. She inherited everything, leaving his longtime girlfriend and 9 children with nothing. Heath Ledger also didn't plan, but he was only 28 when he left us, and he had a daughter, and he left the daughter and mother with nothing because he left it to his parents and sister. So it is common, is what I am saying, for anyone at any level to not plan. People think it's important to plan. 59% of adults believe it's very or somewhat important to have a living trust or a will, yet only 32% of the respondents actually had one in place. So if you don't have one, you can also reach out to us or Seth at the Parkinson Association for who should I use to create these documents and what kind of documents do I need? First, let's have a conversation with the individual who is aging and yourself and make sure that you know what your goals are and what your intentions are and what you need to get done in terms of your will and estate plan. So, a will, if you're not familiar, is a legal document that expresses your wishes on how your property will be distributed after death. This helps your assets not need to go through probate upon death. An estate is everything that someone owns, and it allows for a quick and easy transfer of those assets to an individual using an estate plan. An estate plan sounds really complicated and very difficult, but it's not as hard as it seems. We can all do it. So what you want to do is figure out who is going to be a guardian should you leave this earth sooner than you want. Who's going to take care of your children or your pets or whatever, and determine those directives. You have to name those beneficiaries. You create a plan. An attorney can do it. You can find one online. You sign and notarize your plan, and then you notify your executor who will be in charge of executing this plan upon death and figure out where these planning documents are stored. Sometimes your attorney can hold them on file at their office. And then you look at it every year and update as needed. An advance directive is a really important legal document that would direct an individual like an EMT who comes to your home after a fall, or if you're in the hospital, what you would like done in terms of life-saving measures. If you have an advance directive, it does not mean that you have a do not resuscitate. You have lots of choices about what that looks like. And each state has its own laws, but here in Colorado, we have the most form, and that most form does need to be signed by a physician. When we go into a home, we talk about advance directives. We have a policy on honoring those advance directives, and we like to take a look at them. And then if their advance directive has a most form, and that most form surprisingly oftentimes is not signed by the physician. And so they think that they have one in place. But if I were to give this to the EMT who comes after a fall to help them get up or check their vitals, they would not be able to even look at it. It's not useful unless it's signed. You can have different kinds of powers of attorney. You have a financial one who can make financial decisions when you are not able. This doesn't make the financial decisions when you're able, but let's say that you do end up in the hospital and you need some bills paid or you need decisions made. You need to have a financial power of attorney in place. A digital power of attorney designates who manages our digital assets, if we have any of those, like brokerage accounts. And then beneficiary designations, there's several types. There's a primary one, who's the first individual in line to receive benefits. A contingent beneficiary is an individual who receives the benefits of an account if the primary beneficiary is deceased. And then you're going to have living wills and trust, which we talked a little bit about a living will. A trust is a fiduciary arrangement that allows a trustee to hold your assets and manage them based on what your trust says. And you can have an irrevocable one, which you can't change, or a revocable one. And here are the definitions of the revocable trust and irrevocable trust. Revocable is just much more flexible and can be dissolved at any time should your circumstances changes. So you could just do one for a period of time when you're ill and then get rid of it if you don't want it. Benefits of a trust: you need to be able to control your wealth, protect your legacy, and it helps with your own privacy, and it avoids probate. So the third thing that can happen that can cause some confusion within families is how independent does our aging adult want to be? Oftentimes I hear my family members say, well, I don't want to be a burden. Okay, well, I appreciate that, but let's talk about what that means to you. So when can an older adult have the conversation with their kid about driving? How do we make that not a hot button issue? There are companies out there who do come to the home, paid for by Medicare, that do a driving assessment. It is not the daughter taking away the keys. It is our friends at XYZ Home Health. The living environment. So, how private are they? Are they okay with home care or a different housekeeper or having someone do their lawn? And then falls. Uh, Over half of falls are never reported. So individuals are not sharing when they do fall in the home because they are fiercely holding on to their independence, and not sharing that they had a fall reduces their ability to then get home health in the home to prevent the next fall and reduce the risk by doing a home safety assessment. Maybe it was a simple throw rug that we get rid of, the problem is solved. And then dignity and risk. So, do I want my daughter to be my main caregiver? What that might mean is that she will bathe me. Is that something I'm comfortable with? Distance. Uh, so sometimes there's challenges when a outside family member comes to town and then is alarmist about what's going on, or they don't know the whole picture and they don't feel like they're helping enough from afar. And how do I give my sister a break when I'm in Texas? That presents a whole different set of challenges. And then if you're the daughter or the son who's in close quarters, you could be 24/7, you're on call. And it can lead to burnout and burden. It can be hard on family relationships, the primary caregiver's own kids and spouse. And asking for help from other family members, like hiring respite, can allow for dedicating certain times with your parent, also certain times with your own kids and your own spouse. And so you get a little bit also of the time back where you're the daughter and not the caregiver. Boundaries can be very difficult, and it's hard to develop boundaries as the caregiver, especially when you're experiencing changes in your relationship dynamic with the person that you're caregiving for. So having a conversation about those boundaries and what they should look like is really important. And we have questions about what questions to ask to figure out what should my boundaries be. So 45% of adults have never had an end of life conversation with their loved one. So, and that can include planning a funeral, simple conversation about that. Almost 50% of adults report that the pandemic has made them more likely to have the end of life discussions. Now that is seemingly, even though it was only 5 years ago, not top of mind as it was in 2020. 1 in 6 Americans would rather have a colonoscopy than discuss their end of life plans. And then 53% of Americans believe it's harder to discuss a decision about giving up driving than relationships and sex. That's how important it is. And that's how much weight they put on that and their independence and their aging and grief associated with that. So what we like to call that is an elderscopy. So this is kind of like a colonoscopy, an endoscopy, the list goes on, but families can neglect some assessment that can determine the living and financial arrangements that are needed to make sure that everyone's needs are met as we age. So it's an assessment. There's just 6 questions that you ask. And then having these conversations is proven to improve outcomes, reduce stress, and help plan financially. So what are these questions? 1, where do I want to live out my senior years? Where am I going to be? Am I going to be at home, an independent living, an assisted living, a smaller assisted living, like a home style one? Am I going to be living with my daughter? Am I going to be living with my son in a different state? Where do I want to be? What lifestyle do I desire as I grow older? What do I want to be doing? How do I spend my time? How am I going to plan to stay healthy as I age? That deserves a plan because it is very easy as we age to lose the motivation and interest in investing in our own health. And then if I find myself single, what's next? How do I see myself getting around if I can no longer drive? If I have an answer to that question, if and when I get to the point where I can't drive, it's not nearly as difficult because I have a plan. to remain very active in my community and to get around and remain independent, even though I'm not the one in the driver's seat. And then how do I want my final years to look for me and my whole family? Home Instead has this checklist. You can email me after this if you have interest, or Seth, and we can send you this whole packet on how to do this. But there's a lot of questions for those hot button topics that you can print out. But here are some ideas on some questions that you can ask. So, about where I want to live, most people have an idea, and the majority want to stay in their home. But the issue is that they're not communicating that as soon as they need to in order to plan for that. And let's say that you can't remain in your home. What are things in your home you do not want to give up? Items that you would hope would never be sold. And if you need care at home, do you want it to be a family member or a professional that you build a relationship with on the side, and it's not your family, and so you can keep that privacy with your family? And then I like the question, what option is the best for both of us? Me and you, Dad. What is best for both of us? What lifestyle do I desire? Do I have a bucket list? Do I want to volunteer as a support group leader? Do I want to just be around family or friends? Do I want to be alone? So, Mom, which would you rather have? More time, money, or memories? Mom, are you worried about running out of money to support the lifestyle that you desire? Hey, Mom, have you considered downsizing? How much have you researched regarding care and the costs of care? How do I plan to stay healthy as I age? Even small changes can make a big difference, like increasing the amount of protein in your diet. It can really make a big difference. And staying active. Sometimes people can be too quick to downsize and they get rid of their stairs. And the stairs are the one thing that's keeping the muscle mass on their legs. Using those stairs as long as you possibly can. So some conversation starters with that. What's one area of your health that you would change if you could? Do you ever have trouble managing it all? Are you having any new symptoms? Have you talked to your doctor about anything new lately? And then if I find myself single, what am I going to do? There's some questions to talk with your parent about. If you lost your spouse, would you want to date again? If you found yourself lonely, how would you fill that time if mom or dad did pass before you did? How do I see myself getting around if I can no longer drive? This is, again, a super upsetting part of getting older. So there needs to be a plan in place prior to losing their ability to drive. Understand, how would this make you feel? And what alternatives do we have if you can no longer drive? And then how do I want those final years to look? What's your biggest fear about passing away? Maybe it's being alone. Maybe it's that I never connected with my brother and we hadn't had a relationship in the last 10 years. Let's make that come true for our loved ones. If you can no longer make your own decisions about care, who is going to act in your best interest? Do we have the medical power of attorney in place to actually make those decisions? And then what kind of end-of-life care do you want? Where do you want that end-of-life care to happen? Would it be super upsetting to be in a community setting, in a hospice setting? Do you want to be at home? Do you not want to be at home for that? Let's figure out, what are your wishes? And what did we learn today? That it is so important to make a plan to start the conversation about where an aging loved one or where you would like to age, and figure out how we can do it. Discover the areas that need attention, from finances to family dynamics to home safety modifications to looking for extra outside support. And then let's prioritize what needs to be tackled first to ensure everyone's wishes come true and that everyone's needs are respected. And then recognize progress along this way. The conversations and decisions and changes are not easy, and they can stir up a lot of emotion. So it's important to recognize every step of the way that you've made progress with your own plan or the plan for your loved one should be celebrated. And then Real quick, this is our team at Home Instead Denver, and this is what we do. We can help navigate these conversations with your family, understand all of your care options. And I'm just really proud to work at Home Instead, and it's just a terrific organization. And that is our team here just in the Denver area. And what we do is we do personal care services, including bathing, grooming, and dressing. We can support someone on hospice. We can come in and do meals, and we can clean the home. We provide transportation services and companionship and connection. We've had matches for decades where an individual and their caregiver have been together for a really long time. And then we also have our Class A license, so we can do nurse-directed care in the event you need short-term or long-term medication administration, feeding tubes, bowel programs, etc. And this is it. So I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm going to close this out.
Couple of questions, Kristin, that we have through the chat. First one is from Karen. Hi, Karen. Hope you are well. Is there a minimum time for home care?
Depends on the company. At Home Instead, there is no minimum time for home care. We can go in for an hour. Some home care companies do have a 4-hour minimum or a 12-hour a week minimum. But yeah, we can manage short visits.
Perfect. And then a similar question from Fran, well, unique to you. How much does Home Instead charge for hourly care, daytime versus overnight?
Daytime and overnight is the same, and our hourly rate is $41.
And it looks like another question from Karen. At what age would you recommend starting LTC insurance?
It depends on how much it costs at your age. So I would ask your financial advisor or someone who brokers that insurance and ask them, because they can tell you if you start now versus if we start in 5 or 10 years. Long-term care insurance has improved in the packages that they offer, where now they can convert to a life insurance policy. So when you do determine if this is right for you and your family, get one that can convert to a life insurance policy in the event you're never able to utilize those benefits. But don't wait until you're 60. Do it sooner.
Does Colorado Medicaid pay for a family member to be trained as a caregiver?
Yes, they do. It's called the Family Caregiver Program. And yes, so the family caregiver can be assigned to their loved one, and they are paid using Medicaid dollars to care for that person.
Thank you. And then you may or may not know this given the territory that you serve, but are there any geriatric care managers in Pueblo?
Yes, and Home Instead does cover Pueblo. That owner, her name is Katie, and so I will email Katie or text her and see who she would recommend for Pueblo geriatric care manager. If you want to leave your email, I'm happy to email you a response.
Yeah, Aaron, if you can, I can't see who asked that question. It might be Karen, since I know she's in Pueblo. But yeah, those look like they're all the questions on the chat. Aaron, did you have any other ones?
Nope, those were the ones that were sent to me directly. And yes, it was from Karen.
Perfect. So Kristin, those are all the questions via the chat. If you have a question, if you're on the call, you can go ahead and unmute yourself in the lower left-hand corner, and you could ask Kristin any question.
Don't be shy.
Hi, I'm Linda. I'm sorry I had to join late. I had a commitment. So I'm just wondering, can I get a recording? I think it looked like it was being recorded, and how do I access that, please?
I can
Yep.
send that to you, Linda. If you want to just put your email in the chat, I'll email that over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you. That was great. Great presentation.
Yeah, and we'll send the recording and the presentation to everybody that was on the call. And I know we had a lot more people that registered as well, partly so they can get the recording. So we will send that out to everybody.
Kim, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Kristin, hi. We're going to meet Monday for a period of time, but I get this question a lot. I've had a lot of experience with Medicaid and Medicare. A lot of people are very hesitant to sign up for Medicare Advantage plans for a variety of reasons. However, that seems to pay for some services that a supplement does not pay for. Do you have any recommendations for some of my folks that come to see me wanting to pay for the home services or the home health services and utilizing Medicare Advantage plans, or still getting a supplement and then maybe paying separately? What have you guys done at Home Instead?
Thanks, Kim, for your question. We partner with individuals who are experts at navigating Medicare, Medicare Advantage plans, and Medicaid, and this is their entire job. Anecdotally and off the record, we have seen families be disappointed in moving to a Medicare Advantage plan because the other services that regular Medicare would cover are sometimes stymied and difficult to get coverage for. Yet it can cover home care, but the home care benefit is fairly limited. It sounds like it would be an amazing thing, but it's, an episode of maybe 40 hours of care. So we can't, change someone's plan for them, and nor do we want that responsibility, but we have people who can go over the exact issues that you're going to find with each different plan, and then they have to prioritize that way. So Kim, maybe when I come Monday, I can give you our contacts for that.
Okay,
If that would
that'd be
help.
great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you bet.
So,
Robert. Oh,
yes, hi, it's actually Linda Porter. I
Okay.
was wondering about, we're in a remodel or starting a remodel in our home. And I'm wondering about, do you, Kristin, have a list that I could give our GC of aging in place, things to consider, like showers that don't have ledges, doors that are wide enough for, a wheelchair. This is, again, something that is not needed at this moment, but I anticipate it, being that my husband has, Parkinson's. So wondering what I can do do you have a list for me?
Yes, we can easily make a list, and Seth, I'm sure you can too. And then maybe Forrester Family Medical, a partner of ours, they're experts in doing home modifications and home safety adaptations. So looping them into the conversation too for things we wouldn't even think about. But
Right.
yes, you named two really great ones, the wide doors, and then
Yeah. So will I get a list from you? Is that what I'm going to be? Should I
Yes.
email you or? Okay.
Yes, if you want to email me or just put your email in the chat. I don't know. I know you're on an iPhone, so that might be difficult.
Yeah, I think so. So how do
Okay.
I get your email?
So you can write it down, or I can write
Okay,
down
let me.
your-
Okay. Sure. Can I give you mine? It's linda33porter@gmail.com.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you, Kristin. And thank you again for today. It was great.
You bet.
Anne, I'll ask your question. Kristin, her question is, my husband needs coaching and encouragement for physical exercise. Do you have folks who specialize in that? And before Kristin speaks, Delisa Novak is our exercise coordinator here at PAR. She is very familiar with a lot of that piece. She's the one who works with our 85 exercise instructors around town. So she might be able to put you in touch with someone, Kim, as well, both for Anne and I think Linda, who asked the previous question. We also have a lot of resources that we can share out. Lifeway Mobility is another one you can go into your home and help with customization. It can help you with sort of that decision making as you build or remodel. But Kristin, do you have anything to expand to do you have folks who can specialize in that from a coaching and encouragement for physical exercise standpoint?
Yes. So if there's already a physical therapy kind of plan in place, what exercises are appropriate for that person, and is that the issue? Just making sure that the exercise plan is appropriate for them and safe for them is number one. If not, I would recommend getting a physical therapist to put one of those together and then having someone come in and reinforce that plan. That can be home care, it can be a personal trainer. And we do have personal trainers who specialize in movement disorders that can come to the home. And so this is kind of their bread and butter. And it depends what area of town you live in, but maybe you could also email me or Seth or someone and we can connect you with them. But, the apathy associated with this disease, this is a very normal thing to not want to exercise. And so it's something that we're really familiar with. And you do need the right personality to encourage that exercise for that person. It takes a lot of trial and error.
Fran and everyone else, we will go ahead and send you a copy of the elderscopy information as well with the follow-up. So Kristen will make sure to get that to us. Is there a care manager in Fort Collins I can talk to about a housing and care plan?
Absolutely. Yes.
That's for Linda.
Absolutely. Yes, I cover the Fort Collins area. So we have 4 care managers and an RN up there. So we're happy to connect you.
Let's see. It looks like a question from Wendy. A recent webinar indicated that in Colorado, LTC Medicaid does not look at the assets or income of the non-ill spouse when considering whether the ill person qualifies for LTC Medicaid. Is that accurate? Her understanding is that Medicaid looks at household income and assets.
That's beyond me. From what I understood, that yes, they looked at both spouses' assets. The house can be not included, but I could be wrong. And a car cannot be included.
I just had that case, a case like that, Kristen. That is now my understanding. It did not used to be that way, but I am researching that more because previously all assets for both spouses were looked at and they had to do a spin down, which caused a problem for the non-ill spouse. But if we get this person's info, I will reach out to her as well.
Yes, and there's a company called Beneficent. They help families navigate through what it might take to qualify for Medicaid. And they're quite creative and they can keep assets. And if you have time, you can work around the 5-year look back period or 60 months where you move money and then you plan for a Medicaid spend down 5 years later. But you need to plan in advance.
Kristen, do you mind going to I think your last slide had your email on it. Was it your last slide? We've had a couple of questions asking for your contact information. Waylon, we'll make sure to get you that packet and the information. Waylon's also asking for anything you may have on the Medicaid Family Caregiver Program.
Mm-hmm.
And then we could share, Waylon, if you want, we could share your email to Kristen as well. But here's Kristen's email and contact information for those of you that are asking. We are at the top of the hour, so we want to respect your time. Again, thank you so much. This will, again, be sent out to you. It was